Welcome to California Highways Route by Route. This podcast explores everything about numbered highways in California, from Route 8 along the coast to US 395 along the Sierras, from Route 8 in the south to Route 139 in the north.
Brought to you by the California Highways webpage and Gribble Nation.
I'm Daniel Fagan. I do the California Highways webpage at www.cahighways.org.
I'm Tom Fear. I'm one of 4 admins on GribbleNation.org. Typically, I am the one writing about California in the southwest section of the United States.
This is bonus episode 2.13, Fastrak and Tolling. We decided to do a few episodes in our mid-season break. We'd originally planned for this to be about an hour of interview with our guest on the subject, but the discussion was so good we went long. So this is the first half of the interview. Episode 2.14 will be the second half of the interview. I also apologize for the delay in getting this out. Busy schedules made it hard to find the time to record it, but I think you'll agree it was worth it. So, as I said, we are currently in our mid-season break while we write the episodes for Season 3, where we will cover Route 3 through Route 7. I've written Route 3. I've written the 3 episodes on Route 4, which Tom is reviewing. And while I'm on vacation, I'm going to be working on the multiple episodes on Route 5. During this break, at a slower pace, we'll bring you some highway episodes on special topics. And today's episode will feature a discussion with Joe Rouse from Caltrans, talking about tolling, fast-track devices, and people's attempts to evade tolls. Now, before I ask Joe to introduce himself, I'll say I've known Joe, you go back to the days of Mistransport Road, I think.
Yeah, it's been 25.
Yeah, I've known Joe for a long time. He's contributed things to my website, and I think he's contributed some leads to your website, right, Tom?
Yeah, a couple. I think I barely missed you up in Sacramento when I was looking up the Route 203 stuff.
So, why don't you introduce yourself, Joe, and tell us what you do and what you're not speaking as.
Okay. Well, Daniel and Tom, first, thanks for the opportunity to be able to participate in the work that you guys are doing. I think it's a great service to the community as a whole, and so I'm really honored to be able to speak with you guys today. So, as you indicated, I work for Caltrans. I specifically work in our Division of Traffic Operations out of our headquarters in Sacramento. I'm a senior transportation engineer. My main area of responsibility is supporting managed lanes. So that's the carpool lanes, the high occupancy toll lanes, and other types of facilities like that. But my special area of emphasis is on the use of tolling as a strategy on managed lanes and also tolling in general on state highways. Now, having said that, I do need to, in the interest of full disclosure, just say that I am here today as a private citizen. I am not here officially representing Caltrans. The views expressed here are my own and may not necessarily represent those of Caltrans. The information that I will be sharing today, I've gleaned through my work at Caltrans. And part of the reason why I wanted to come on today is because I do get a lot of questions from members of the public about tolling, how it operates, who does what, who's responsible for what. And so, when I heard you guys do your podcast a while back on the Golden Gate Bridge, I thought, hey, you know what, it would be great if we could talk a little bit about tolling in California, about Fastrak, how it works, and who does what. And so I did share that idea with Daniel, who's very open to it, and so that's why we're here today. So
I'll say both Tom and I understand you're not speaking for California. We, and I'll reiterate it, do not speak on behalf of our employers either, and for similar reasons. Before we get to the toll stuff, I want to say California used to only have an occasional toll bridge. I think the original tolls were just on some bridges. The HOV lanes, I remember them. Adrian Gianturco was in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
When Jerry Brown was there. I'm old enough to remember that iteration. I remember the El Monte Busway, which wasn't quite a toll road, but was restricted access and is still Route 10S as opposed to Route 10. And I don't think it's actually interstate highway. So, these managed lanes, having the specialized lanes, have been around for a while now. But one of the common questions we get is people who hear the term freeway and think that means it is free and it won't cost anything. And so can you describe what is tolled in California and what free actually means in freeways? Is it like, the Linux approach of, what is it, free as in beer but not free as in cost or something like that?
Okay. Yeah, so when we talk about freeway, there's actually some legal definitions for it, I believe, either in the Vehicle Code or in the California Streets and Highways Code. But basically what it means is it's free from intersections, free from conflicting traffic. So the traffic that's on this freeway basically can travel without a lot of things impeding them, such as intersecting vehicles, driveways, things like that. Generally with a freeway, access is only at interchanges, via on and off ramps. And technically, some of our expressways, they are a sort of a freeway, although they have more surface street interchanges versus interchanges. But the concept is still the same. It's still technically a freeway under the legal definition because of the amount of access control associated with it. So I hope that kind of provides some clarity. When we talk about a freeway, we're not talking about a road that's free to travel on. We are talking about one that is free from impediments like intersections and traffic signals. Now, as far as what's tolled in California, there are 7 state-owned toll bridges. And these are all located in the San Francisco Bay Area. Those bridges specifically are moving from south to north, the Dumbarton Bridge, which is on State Route 84, the San Mateo Hayward Bridge, which is on State Route 92, the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge, which is part of Interstate 80. Then you have the Richmond San Rafael Bridge, which is part of Interstate 580. And then if you swing around to the east along the Carquinez Strait and the California Delta, you have the Carquinez bridges, which are on Interstate 80, the Benicia Martinez Bridge, which is on Interstate 680, and then lastly, you have the Antioch Bridge, which is part of State Route 160. There is an 8th bridge in the Bay Area, which is the Golden Gate Bridge. That is not a state-owned bridge, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. We used to actually have 9 state-owned toll bridges. We had 2 toll bridges down in Southern California, the Vincent Thomas Bridge on State Route 47 and the San Diego Coronado Bridge on State Route 75. The tolls were removed on the Vincent Thomas Bridge in 1999 after the bonds that were being repaid by the tolls, after those bonds were fully paid off. The Coronado Bridge, it was also paid off, and the tolls were removed on that, and I believe that occurred in 2002. So those are the toll bridges, and those are probably the ones that most people across California are familiar with. We do have a small network of toll roads that were built in Orange County in the early 1990s. And these comprise parts of State Route 73 and State Route 133, and all of State Route 241 and State Route 261 are part of this toll road network. These roads, again, were built in the 1990s in response to growth in that part of Orange County. It's mostly in the southeastern part of Orange County is where these toll roads are located. And the state did not have the funds to build all these roads. They were part of the state highway system. They still are part of the state highway system, but the state didn't have the funding to build them. So instead, the local governments down there got together and formed a couple of agencies specifically for the purpose of issuing revenue bonds and collecting tolls to get these roads built. They also collect developer fees for all of the housing that is built around those toll roads, and a portion of those developer fees go to help pay for those toll roads as well. So that's the Orange County Toll Road Network. We have another toll road down in San Diego that was built it's called the South Bay Expressway, or SBX, as I'll refer to it here from time to time, and that's part of State Route 125, and that runs between State Route 54 and State Route 905. That road opened in 2007. Lastly, we have 15 express lanes. And when I talk about express lanes, these are toll lanes that are usually found in the middle of the freeways. More often than not, they are HOV lanes, or formerly HOV lanes, that have now been opened to toll-paying vehicles. We do have a few of these express lanes that have been built from the ground up as express lanes, but the vast majority of them are HOV lanes that have been open to toll-paying vehicles. So, Daniel, you mentioned the El Monte Busway. That was a case of where that road was originally built as a set of bus lanes. It was open to HOVs in the 1970s, and then in 2012, they opened it up to toll-paying vehicles. So that's a classic example of a concept of express lane, which the HOV lane has been converted to open to toll-paying vehicles.
And it was unique in Southern California in that it was the only HOV3 lane, whereas most of the other lanes in Southern California freeways were HOV2. And I want to say, Tom, feel free to jump in on this as well.
Oh yeah, my area we don't have anything.
The express that type of HOV lane is also known as a high occupancy toll lane, but we're just going to refer to it from here on out as express lanes because that's how they're signed. That's how most people identify them. That's how they're labeled. So I think just for the ease of the people listening to this, we're just going to refer to them as that. They may have very different rules in some cases. Everybody may need to pay, and HOVs may only go at a discount. But for the most part, HOVs go toll-free on these facilities. We have 15 of these express lanes in operation across California. There's 8 in the Bay Area. There's 2 in Los Angeles, 2 in Orange County, 2 in the Inland Empire, and 1 down in San Diego. And there's going to be a third express lane facility that's going to open up in San Bernardino County, I believe sometime next month. And so that will bring the total to 16.
And as I recall, the express lane on the 91 was originally run by a separate agency, and OCTA took it over at some point when they were having financial trouble. And I also recall that there are a few more that are on the books still being built. I think I've seen some proposals talking about possibly making the LA part of the 405 lanes express. I know they're working on building some more up in the Bay Area, extending the lanes on the 101.
Yes. So let me touch real quick on...
And of course, we should mention the whole thing that's been in the news of late of the YOLO 80 project.
Yes. Let me touch first on your comment about the 91 express lane. So the 91 express lane and the SBX toll road, that part of State Route 125 in San Diego, both of those projects were built under some pilot legislation that was passed in 1989 that allowed for public-private partnerships to build toll facilities across California. There could have been up to 4 of these facilities that were built. Only 2 of them ever got off the ground, the 91 and the SBX. Both of those facilities, eventually the private franchisee was bought out and a public agency partner took it over. So in the case of the 91, the Orange County Transportation Authority took over the franchise, and in the case of SBX, the San Diego Association of Governments, SANDAG, took over that franchise. Now, Daniel, you did mention that there are more express lanes coming, and that is absolutely true. There are many, many more planned. If you look at the regional transportation plans for many of the state's urban areas, they have large networks planned. So the next one, as I mentioned earlier, that's going online is I-10 in San Bernardino. That's supposed to open next month. You mentioned the project on Interstate 80 in Yolo County, west of Sacramento. That project will be going to construction soon. There are projects underway in the Bay Area as well, closing a gap on Interstate 680. There's a project down in Southern California on the 105, I-105. They want to turn the HOV lanes into hot lanes there. And that project, I think, will be going to construction here probably within the next year or 2. And then, as you also mentioned, I-405, there's also a plan for express lanes on I-405. So, lots of work going to be happening in the express lane arena in the coming years. That is going to be the predominant form of toll facilities in California. So you'll be seeing them in a lot more places, and many of these projects will involve the conversion of existing HOV lanes to the hot lane concept.
Yeah,
so some will also be from the ground up.
So I wonder at this point, would District 6 be the largest Caltrans district as far as a freeway network that doesn't have any hot lanes or anything tolled at this point?
I would say that's an accurate statement, yes. Although they are doing a study for HOV lanes, at least in the Fresno area, and where they're focused though is they want to put truck lanes on 99 between Fresno and further south down into Tulare County, and so those would not be tolled; those would just be straight dedicated truck lanes to help with some of the congestion that occurs sometimes on some of the older stretches of 99 that have not been upgraded yet.
Yeah, I hope to retire before the 405 toll lanes open up, which should be the case.
Yeah.
So, who collects the tolls on these toll roads?
So this is a question that I think this is something that really confuses a lot of people. They think, well, it's a state highway. It's got a California shield on it. It's got an interstate shield. It's a U.S. highway. It's got to be Caltrans that's doing all this stuff. The answer is no, it's not. Tolls on all of these facilities are collected by a regional agency of some kind. It's usually a regional transportation planning agency, so they are usually a county-level type of agency that is responsible for all transportation planning and funding at the county level. They also, in some cases, they also run the transit service, or they have some other type of operation related to that. Some of these agencies do that. But most of these projects are operated by a regional transportation planning agency. There's a few exceptions. So in the case of the Golden Gate Bridge, that project was built under legislation passed in the 1920s that allowed for the creation of a bridge and highway district. So it's really kind of a very unique special district, which is comprised of representatives from San Francisco County, Marin County, Sonoma County, actually all the way up into Del Norte County, way up at the far northwest corner of California. Del Norte County has a board member, has a representative on the board of the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District.
Yet, as I recall, either San Mateo or San Jose does not, which is surprising.
Yeah, it's only San Francisco and the counties north of the Golden Gate that have representation on that board.
Very strange.
Yeah. And the reason why is because it was those counties that were really going to benefit the most from having the access to San Francisco. And so back in the day when they created that authority, those were the counties that were really most interested in being a part of it. In the case of the Orange County toll roads, I think we already talked about that a little bit. There's two dedicated agencies. They actually kind of operate as one single agency, known as the Transportation Corridor Agencies. And these are joint powers authorities. Joint powers authorities are, under California state law, two or more government entities can join together for the purpose of operating a facility or doing some type of business, whatever. And so in this case, Orange County and several cities located in these areas where these toll roads are built, they joined together to form these joint power authorities to develop and operate those toll facilities. I'll just digress. Caltrans recently became part of a joint powers authority with the Sacramento Area Council of Governments and the YOLO Transportation District. And that joint powers authority is known as the Capital Area Regional Toll Authority, and that CARTA will be responsible for operating the I-80 managed lanes in YOLO County, which I was mentioning earlier, are going to go to construction later this year. So Caltrans has not been a part of any of these JPAs or these other organizations other than ex officio members of the board. We're not involved with Golden Gate Bridge at all, but like the regional transportation planning agencies, Caltrans is usually an ex officio member of the governing board, but we're not actually part of those organizations. In the Bay Area, it's also kind of unique. Even though those bridges are state-owned, we have turned over the tolling responsibility to a organization known as the Bay Area Toll Authority. BATA is legally one and the same as the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which oversees transportation planning and funding for the 9 counties in the San Francisco Bay Area. But when we got out of, when the tolls were removed on the Vincent Thomas Bridge and the Coronado Bridge, we decided to turn over the tolling responsibilities over to MTC through BATA. And so they manage the tolling on those bridges. They also manage the tolling on the express lanes in all of the Bay Area, even the ones that they don't necessarily operate. There are a couple of county-level transportation planning agencies that run express lanes, Alameda County Transportation Commission and the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, and then the San Mateo 101 project, that's another joint powers authority that runs that. But MTC BATA handles the actual tolling operations for those 3 agencies. So it's kind of these weird hybrid relationships between all of these different agencies, but that's really kind of how it's structured there. And again, down in Southern California, I think we kind of covered it. Most of those are regional transportation planning agencies that run those. So the other thing I want to point out is that with the exception of the Golden Gate Bridge, all of these facilities are state highways. they're owned by Caltrans. But what's happened over the years is that these agencies have all obtained special authority, either through the legislature or through the California Transportation Commission, depending on the legislative authority that they used, to develop and operate the facilities and to collect the tolls. And these agencies all have agreements with Caltrans that discuss and dictate how the facility is going to be operated. They talk about roles and responsibilities. But in general, the Regional Transportation Agency, the agency with the toll collection, is fully responsible for setting the tolls, collecting the tolls, and administering everything. Caltrans gets involved in terms of monitoring the operations, and helping supporting them in whatever they need to do. But we really are not involved at Caltrans in the actual toll operation. That's handled by these agencies.
One note and one question. The note is, we did a whole episode in season 1 that talked about the role of the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, so I'll recommend folks, if you're interested in that, to go look at the archives. The other question I had is, are there any, other than the Golden Gate, non-state roads that are tolled or there are plans to toll? I'm thinking anything like, the expressways that Santa Clara County runs. I know there are some other cities that have built some specialized roads, some specialized expressways. Are you aware of any attempts to try and toll those?
No, the only other toll road that I didn't mention here at all, that's not on the state system, is 17 Mile Drive. There on the Monterey Peninsula. And that's run by the private landowners down there. That's the only other privately operated toll facility that I know of. We talked earlier about a lot of these express lanes that are being planned. Again, they're all being planned by public agencies, usually a regional transportation planning agency.
And I'll note, and I'll give a chance for Tom to jump in because I tend to jump in. When we talk about Route 3 and Route 4 and some of the mountain roads, you'll see that a lot of the state highways in California, especially in the mountain passes, started as toll franchises from the state and were later taken over.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Quite the contrast from even early 20th century when those franchise toll roads were still around. I still recall seeing signs for like the Eachbaum Toll Road, which was legislative Route 127, which later became Route 190. It's fairly close to modern times when you think about it, and it's just something people really don't think is an entity anymore. It's kind of odd when you ponder over it for a minute.
Yeah, there were a number of privately operated toll roads and bridges that were eventually adopted into the state highway system. So the original Dumbarton Bridge and the original Antioch Bridge were privately owned toll bridges. And the state came in, and so was the Carquinez Bridge, for that matter, the original Carquinez Bridge. All of them were built by private companies. So was the San Mateo Bridge, actually. I should mention that, too. The San Mateo Bridge was also privately built and operated. And the state came in, in the 1940s and bought the private operators out. And for a time, they did remove the tolls on some of those bridges. They eventually did reinstate them, when they eventually wound up replacing all of those bridges. A couple of them, I should say. But yeah, and another one that also has an interesting history is State Route 37. The portion of State Route 37 between State Route 121 and roughly State Route 29 was a private toll road, the Sears Point Toll Road. And I suspect, and Daniel, I'd have to refer to your information on your website about this, but I believe part of the reason why that road was designated as State Highway 48 was because it had been that privately operated toll road, and then when the state bought that, they gave it its own separate route number. Now, of course, in the renumbering of 1964, it was redesignated as part of Route 37. But I'm wondering if the fact that it was privately operated at one time and bought by the state is the reason why it had its own separate route number there for a few years.
Yeah, Route 37 went towards Napa originally, and the Sears Point Toll Road, that was a later adoption. So I believe you're on the right track there. I think it's more that it was just a later adoption, and it was more or less consolidated in the Route 37 when the renumbering happened in 64.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured.
Interesting aside about the San Mateo Hayward Bridge, that actually was one of two proposals for the extension for U.S. Route 6 into California. around 1935 to 1937, and at the time, ASHA was actually rejecting applications for route extensions that involved toll facilities that were not state-owned. So had that bridge hypothetically been owned by the state at the time, there's probably a better chance that would have made it to the Bay Area rather than Long Beach. I always thought that was kind of interesting to see that.
I did not know that. That's very interesting. Okay. I'll have to do some more research on that. Real quick, I want to jump back to the state being involved in the operation of toll facilities. I will tell you that Caltrans is currently looking to possibly develop its own express lane, and that would be on Interstate 5 in Orange County. As you probably know, I-5 has HOV lanes running virtually its entire length in Orange County now. But we are looking at Caltrans. We are looking at possibly converting a portion from Red Hill Avenue, which is just south of State Route 55, converting a portion of that HOV lane up to the LA County line and turning that into a hot lane, and that we would be responsible for the tolling and the operation of that facility. We might contract with another regional toll agency to handle some of the day-to-day operations for us, but it would be our facility. We would collect the tolls, and we would be, managing the revenues that come from it. So this would be the first time for the state to get back into the business of tolling since we relinquished the state-owned toll bridges in the Bay Area back in I guess that would be the early 2000s or late 1990s. So almost 30 years, we've not been involved in actually operating a toll facility ourselves. And this would be a first for us. So that project is going through the environmental approval process. The environmental document should be released on that sometime later this year. And, they'll be starting construction on that probably within the next year or so. And
I think I recall seeing that in the CTC minutes, and I've got some information on that on my Route 5 page.
Yeah, they have not received the tolling authority yet. We would go to the CTC to obtain tolling authority. We haven't done that yet. I think the plan is to do that later this summer, or maybe this fall. And then,
but the CTC but the CTC still has to have the project in the shop for the STIP, and
that's correct.
That's where I've caught it from.
Right. So they have been pursuing the funding on that.
Yeah. So do all the toll roads and toll bridges toll in the same way? I mean, I still remember the days where you would throw coins in a basket, but then I'm getting to be old.
In short, no. So let's talk first about, the toll rates themselves, and then I think we can talk a little bit more about the payment methods. So the toll bridges generally charge the same toll to everybody, regardless of the time of day. Now, carpoolers on the state-owned toll bridges, they get a discount. On the Golden Gate Bridge, they also get a discount. You have to usually have 3 or more people in the vehicle to get that discount. But generally, the toll is it's a flat rate. So it's the same regardless of the time of day. Now, for a few years in the 1970s and the 1980s, the Golden Gate Bridge experimented with having different tolls on different days of the week. So they would charge a toll, one toll rate Monday through Thursday at midnight, and then Friday at 12 a.m. to Sunday at 11:59, it was a different toll rate. And that was because the weekend usage rates were heavier. A few years ago, the tolls on the Bay Bridge also varied by time of day. They were a little bit higher during the peak periods, the weekday morning and afternoon peak periods, and then they were different outside of those hours. Now that's all changed. They just have flat rate toll. It doesn't matter, what time of day you travel through those facilities. The toll is going to be the same. They will offer discounts if you use Fastrak on the Golden Gate Bridge. Again, as I was saying earlier, they also offer discounts to the carpoolers, usually with 3 or more people in the vehicle during the peak periods. Now, down in Southern California, the toll roads, the Transportation Corridor Agency toll roads, the Orange County network, their tolls vary by time of day on the main line. So the mainline toll plazas that they have on those routes, the tolls may vary depending on the time of the day as you pass through there. The toll is always going to be the same, regardless of time of day, if you get on at a ramp. If you pay a toll at a ramp, that toll is not going to change.
Now, is the 91 considered one of the TCA toll roads?
No, That is not. That express lane is operated by the Orange County Transportation Authority. And express lanes, like the 91, they've always used variable tolls. They either may change in real time, depending on the amount of capacity that's available in the lane, because that's how they base the tolls, depending on how much space they have available, because they want to keep the lanes free flowing, and you don't want to flood it with traffic, and so you don't want to encourage too many people to use the lane, and so that's why the tolls go up when there's less capacity to sell. Very similar concept to telecommunications and other industries, the airlines. If you travel at peak periods, or if you use your phone at peak periods, or if you use electricity at peak periods, you're going to pay more, right? So the same concept applies with these express lanes. You're going to
you won't have a Charlie on the MTA type of situation where you get in, and if you don't have the funds, you can't get out.
Yeah. So in the case of these express lanes, they have that changes in real time. The 91 express lanes are unique in that the tolls vary hour by hour. They do not necessarily vary in real time. And OCTA will periodically review the tolls, and they may make some adjustments to some of those hourly toll rates. I believe they review them every 6 months, if I recall correctly. So the OCTA, the 91, is very unique in that regard, but all of the other express lanes, they use that dynamic tolling that changes in real time, as frequently as every 5 minutes.
Now, how are the tolls collected? And I ask this because I was once visiting my daughter up in Madison, and we were driving back to L.A., and that meant going through the edge of Chicago. And as we were coming back, going through places like Tulsa. And I was all worried and trying to figure out routes because I had no idea what the tolls were, how to pay them. And, it's sort of scary if you're not from the area and you don't have a human toll taker. What do you do? I mean, how do you pay it? I think it's sort of user unfriendly because we don't put out a lot of signs on this.
Yeah, I've been there with you. I remember taking one of the toll roads in Chicago, and the ramp that we were taking to go into O'Hare Airport, I thought it was going to be a manned toll lane, and it was not. And so we come up to the little coin machine, we throw the coins in, and I didn't have enough to put in there, but we just kind of drove through anyway, and I figure we kind of let the chips fall where they may. So, yeah, I understand the concern and the confusion that can come about if you're not familiar with a lot of these facilities. And here in California, I am afraid to say that we may not necessarily do as great a job as I think we possibly could. And again, I'm not speaking officially on behalf of my employer. This is my own personal opinion. But I think we could possibly do a better job in some cases of communicating how these facilities operate. In the case of the express lanes, those have always been fully electronic. No cash payment at all, no toll booths. That's part of their selling point. You don't have to stop, travel at freeway speed. You have a convenient trip. You get what you pay for, essentially. You're paying for that convenience. As far as the toll bridges are concerned, the Golden Gate Bridge, they did away with their cash toll collection in 2013. It was really kind of a cost savings for them, because they're having to pay these toll takers to sit in there 24/7. So they were looking to cut costs wherever they could, and going fully electronic was a way to do that. The Orange County Toll Road Network, that TCA network, they followed the next year in 2014. They removed all of their cash toll collection. They closed the toll booths. And they got the toll takers reassigned to other jobs within their organization. The state-owned toll bridges in the Bay Area, they were going to go cashless by 2022 as well. But the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, accelerated that. In 2020, the toll takers stepped out of the booths, and they never returned. And in that case, what happened there was, and the same with the Golden Gate Bridge, you either have your Fastrak electronic toll collection account, which I know we're going to get into here in a few minutes. You pay with Fastrak, or they take a picture of your license plate, and you get a bill, or you can go to and pay your toll yourself, at any number of different vendors. It really varies depending on the facility and the way it operates. But
I know for some of those, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can prepay, so you can say, here's my license plate, I'm going to prepay the toll. I think you can do that with the Golden Gate.
Golden Gate.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
And so that's, the Golden Gate, because it is such a major tourist attraction, really trying to figure out how to accommodate those folks that would only come there on one time, but making sure that they pay and making sure that those tolls are collected. That's why they created all of those special programs like that, where you could prepay in advance, or you could go to, like, say, a 7-Eleven and pay at a kiosk. They have multiple ways for people to pay the tolls on that facility, and they are really trying to keep the traveler, the tourist in mind as they came up with that strategy. The only facility in California. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and as I recall, if they're billing you by license plate, I think there's an extra fee on that, because I remember an article that the fee had been lowered or something. Yes,
they do charge extra for paying by plate because there's a little bit more review and processing that has to take place. The license plate image has to, in some cases, be reviewed. There's some checks against the DMV database that need to occur. There's a little bit more of a process to handle those transactions, whereas, a fast-track transaction is very simple and very easy to do. And so there is a little additional charge that's usually incurred if you pay by plate. So I was going to say the only facility in California that still collects cash is the SBX, the South Bay Expressway, State Route 125 down there in San Diego. They actually still have a toll plaza that is manned. It's only manned during the day, during the daylight hours. At night, they just have cash machines, a coin basket or whatever that you throw your coins into, or you can pay with credit card on that facility as well. And they have a similar setup at the ramps. The toll plaza is located at the ramps along the SBX. You can either pay cash or with card at that facility. That's the only one that still collects cash in California. And as far as I know, I'm not aware of any plans for them to do away with cash toll collection on that facility anytime soon.
Interesting aside about the Golden Gate Bridge, they never actually got rid of the toll gantry. So they actually have a guy that works all day, has a loudspeaker that tells people to keep going. There's a coffee shop right across from it. It's kind of fun to watch because, like, the loudspeakers are really loud and people stop there all the time. I always get a little bit of entertainment out of it.
Yeah, a lot of people were very confused about what happened because the toll booths still remain, and they still remain on the state-owned bridges as well. And they do constitute a bit of a bottleneck. And so there are plans to eventually remove the toll plazas at all of these facilities and instead just replace them with a large gantry, very similar to what's done on the express lanes with the concept that's known as open road tolling, where you basically do not have to stop or slow down at all. You can travel through at freeway speeds.
Are there any issues? Are there any issues with historic preservation on that? I seem to recall, like, there was a very famous clock tower on the Golden Gate or the Oakland Bay Bridge toll collection plaza?
The Golden Gate. The Golden Gate. There are some historical preservation issues on the Golden Gate, and I'm not sure if they are. I knew that they had planned to remove that gantry, the toll plaza, I should say, and replace it with a gantry that was supposed to look similar from the drawings that I recall seeing. I'm really not sure where that project stands right now. I do know that on the state-owned bridges, they do have plans to remove all of the toll plazas on the state-owned bridges, starting, I believe, with either the Dumbarton or the Carquinez first, and then they're going to save the Bay Bridge for last because of the incredible complexity of that location where you've got three major freeways all feeding in. That toll plaza currently has, I believe, 23 or 24 lanes going through it that need to be brought down to 5 lanes, to get onto the bridge itself. So there's a lot of engineering and operational work that needs to be done, to try an analysis that needs to be done to try to figure out how they're going to handle things at the Bay Bridge. The other bridges should be pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of work that would have to be done because of just their location and the fact that they don't have, large volumes of traffic feeding into it. But the Bay Bridge is a little bit of a different story. And so that's what they're going to save. I can
imagine closing down those lanes as you try and remove the plaza.
Yeah.
So how does one get a Fastrak device, and sort of how expensive are they?
Great question. So I mentioned, I don't think I mentioned how many of these regional agencies that we have that are operating, toll facilities that have the authority to operate toll facilities. I believe that there are 12 of them in total, but there are actually only six of those agencies that actually handle the setting up and managing of Fastrak accounts. I think I mentioned that BATA, Bay Area Toll Authority, manages the operations for 3 of the regional transportation agencies in that area. As they also manage it for the Golden Gate Bridge, and then of course they have the state-owned bridges, which they're already responsible for themselves. So not every agency that has the authority to operate a toll facility in California actually manages the Fastrak account, handles the Fastrak account management under them. They may contract out with another agency, either required by law to do that, or they just did it of their own volition. In the case of like the ACTC, the Alameda County Transportation Commission, and the Santa Clara VTA, the legislation that authorizes them to operate their facilities, to develop and operate their hot lanes, they were mandated to contract with MTC BATA to handle the toll collection piece for them. So in short, you have 6 agencies that also issue these toll collection accounts. So you would just go to one of these agencies, take your pick. You don't necessarily have to, reside within the jurisdiction of that agency to have an account set up with them. And basically what you would do is you would set up a prepaid account. You would either tie it into a credit card so that it automatically replenishes once the account balance drops below a certain amount, or you would go in and you would pay with cash. You would set up your account that way, and then you could replenish it with cash down the road. Once you do that, they'll issue you a transponder. Each of these agencies, each of these 6 agencies has at least one customer service center where people can go in and take care of this business. So they try to make it as convenient for the public as they possibly can. Some of these agencies, they've actually set up arrangements with the Auto Club, so AAA, or with retailers like Costco or Walgreens or Albertsons, or a customer could go in and purchase a transponder there, and then they could take it home. They could go online and they could they could go to the agency's website and finish setting up their account. So that's really kind of that's really it in a nutshell. You just go and you plunk your money down, however you do it. They give you a transponder, and you're good to go.
And as I recall, there is a maintenance fee that gets deducted every month for the transponder. That's one reason why, when I was running a van pool, we thought about getting a transponder for the few times we might go and hit an express lane. But since we normally didn't hit it, it wasn't worth getting it because it would just be replenished by fees.
So there are most agencies do charge a monthly fee, but there are at least 2 of those 6 that I mentioned there that do not charge a fee. And in some cases, the agencies such as, Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, LA Metro, they may waive the fee for people who are below a certain income threshold. Others, they may offer a toll credit to frequent users, which could offset that fee, really depending on how frequently you use the facility. But yes, most of them do charge a small account maintenance fee. It's usually $1 or $2 a month, but not all of them do.
Now, admittedly, that means you could pick and choose your agency you want the transponder from. Does it matter where you get it from?
No, it does not. And the reason why it does not is because the state has a requirement that a Fastrak account, a Fastrak transponder that was given to a customer by one toll agency, that transponder can be used on any toll facility in California. That concept, we refer to it as interoperability. It's mandated by state law. So in my case, I set up an account. I have an account with BATA, Bay Area Toll Authority. But I can use my Fastrak transponder issued by BATA, and I can go to Southern California, and I can drive on a toll road. I can drive on an express lane there, and pay my toll with it. Each night, these agencies all have a data exchange. So they look at who used the facility, who owns that account. Is it an account with the Bay Area Toll Authority? Is it an account with LA Metro? Is it a TCA account? Was a TCA transponder used on an LA Metro facility? Well, LA Metro is going to come to TCA and say, hey, I need so much money from that person's account. And so these transactions happen each night. And so there is that interoperability that way. It's very seamless. It's been that way for a number of years.
But there are some slight differences in the transponders, as I recall. I think the Bay Area just has a switch for one passenger, more than one passenger, whereas LA, because of the unique nature of the El Monte busway, had a switch that was one passenger, two passenger, three or more.
Yeah, so the transponders, they do vary. The first set of transponders that were issued back in the 1990s and for many years thereafter were kind of a box, like device that you just mount using Velcro strips on your windshield. And then when the express lanes started to come online, and LA Metro really kind of led the way with this, they wanted everybody on that facility to use a transponder, to pay regardless of whether they were a carpool or whether they were not. But they still wanted, obviously, to offer the carpoolers the toll-free travel. But they wanted everybody to have the transponder because it makes it easier to enforce the rules on that facility. If everybody's using the transponder, everybody's following the rules, it's less, there's less potential for cheating that way and trying to evade the tolls. So the simple solution to that was make everybody carry a transponder. So how do you keep the carpoolers though with the toll-free discount? And so what they did there was they created transponders that have a switch in it. It has a 1, 2, or 3, and you can switch that depending on the number of people you have in the vehicle. That type of transponder, we labeled that as Fastrak Flex, and I'm actually the one who came up with the brand name. Originally, they were just labeled as a Fastrak transponder. But what was happening was when they would display the toll rate on the sign would say carpoolers with Fastrak, no toll. Well, as I was saying, interoperability, in California, you could get a transponder from any agency. So let's say somebody had a transponder from an agency that did not have the switch on it, and they were a carpooler, and they go use that facility, and then they find out they got charged a toll. And they're coming back and they say, well, the sign said with Fastrak, I was not supposed to get tolled. I had Fastrak. Why did I get charged a toll? Well, it was because LA Metro was issuing these transponders, labeling them as Fastrak, and they had the switch. But it was but somebody had a traditional Fastrak without the switch, the labeling was the same. So I really pushed the toll operators to consider branding those switchable transponders separately. And I had to do a little bit of convincing, a little bit of arm twisting, but we were able to make it happen. And so many of these agencies are now using that Fastrak Flex branding for their switchable tags. Not everybody is, but most folks are. And those are being offered in addition to the more traditional, standard transponders. And now the technology has changed, and now we're issuing transponders that are basically a sticker that you can just mount directly onto your windshield. Those are replacing the more traditional boxy type of transponders.
And I think if we're mentioning that, there was an article, I Post Highway Headlines, that came out that a lot of newer cars have, I forget what the chemicals are in the windshield, that actually block the transponder signals. And so you have to check your owner's manual. There are specific spots on the windshield. You may need to put it so it doesn't interfere with your cameras. I know that's the case with my Subaru. And there are sometimes special transponders you have to get that you have to mount on the outside of your car. So because of that windshield problem, and you need to special order those from the agencies. Yes,
that is becoming more and more of an issue with those specialized windshields and the specialized tinting and materials that they're using on there. The traditional transponder and even the sticker transponder technology that we've started to adopt in California, it doesn't necessarily work. So yeah, the other options are you can mount it on your headlight. People will mount it on their headlight. Some cases they may, it's a different type of transponder that gets mounted above where the license plate sits. There are specific rules in terms of where you have to place it so that the transponder, the tag itself, can be read. So you have to be careful about where you place them as well. We can't just place them willy-nilly because otherwise they're not going to get read. But yeah, that is a major issue, and that's starting to become more and more of an issue. So the agencies are really, really cognizant of that and trying to make sure that they provide, alternatives for customers who have that type of situation.
So if you get a new car, read your manual if you're going to need a transponder, I think is really the point, and ask. The other question I'll ask, and I'll see whether Tom has some, and we may be able to skip some of our other questions we had pre-planned. When you say interoperability, is there any thought about interoperability with other states? I know Florida has its own network. I know the East Coast has its own shared network for tolls. Is there any thought about making it so it's, one transponder for the nation?
So that is a great question. So in 2012, Congress passed maybe it wasn't 2012. It was 2012. The Federal Transportation Reauthorization that was passed in 2012, I want to say it was called MAP 21. I never can remember what the names of those bills are. I should know them. But they included a clause in there that mandated that all toll facilities in the United States be interoperable by October 31st, 2016. Now, this provision didn't have any enforcement associated with it, so there wasn't any sort of a threat that, if you're not compatible with each other, if there's not interoperability, you'll lose federal dollars. No, it was just simply a request by Congress to be able to do that.
And it probably came with no money.
Yeah, it didn't come with any money either. That's true. And so, but that was done at the request of some congressman, and I forget where he was from, who was lamenting the fact that he had an account with one agency, I think from his home state, and he could not use his transponder in another state. And so the toll agencies across the country, they really started looking into how to address this, because over the years, tolling across the United States, as you noted, in the Northeast, they all have the brand up there is Easy Pass, and they've used one kind of technology for their transponders, for their toll tags. In the South, in Florida, they had a different type of technology. Texas has a different type of technology. So you had all these different technological approaches to tolling. And so the International Bridge, Tunnel, and Turnpike Association, IBTTA, which is basically an organization that represents the tolling industry, both the agencies that run toll facilities as well as the businesses that support it. IBTTA really kind of took the lead in trying to figure out how to handle this, basically a mandate for national interoperability. And originally they were looking at a technological solution, but instead they've kind of settled on a spoke and hub type solution where certain areas of the country will use one type of technology, but then there will be these hubs between the different areas of the country that allow for transactions to happen even if the technology is different. And that's typically done by collecting a license plate, and going through transactional databases and things like that. Now, in California, when MAP 21 became law, our legislature passed a bill that allowed for the state's toll operators to participate in the national interoperability effort. But that legislation listed only specific types of data that could be shared to support national interoperability. The reason why the data was limited was due to privacy concerns. Privacy has always been a very large concern with a number of folks across California. They don't want their information being shared about where they're traveling to, what they're doing, and they've found some allies in the legislature over the years. And, they've really weighed in heavily on, what sort of data could be shared. What that has resulted in is California cannot right now participate in national interoperability because of the data that we cannot share. We are only specifically limited to sharing certain bits of data. Case in point, one of the bits of data that we cannot share with other states is the toll amount. So we can't even collect. So let's say somebody with an Easy Pass from the Northeast came to California, used their Easy Pass tag on a California facility, assuming we could read it, because it's different technology. We may not even be able to read it, but let's assume that we could. We could not have that transaction. We could not process that transaction because we could not talk to the Easy Pass folks and tell them, oh, this was the toll that they're supposed to pay. We could not collect from Easy Pass because we can't share that information. So there has to be a technical fix here for California to be able to participate in national interoperability that way. Now, that being said, California folks could in the future be able to use their Fastrak tag in another state. And the one state that we are talking to right now is Washington. And so it could be in the future that if you have a Fastrak tag, you could go up and use, the express lanes around Seattle. You could use the 99 toll tunnel. You could use the floating bridge, the 520 floating bridge, or the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Those are all the toll facilities there in Washington. You could drive across those and pay with your toll with Fastrak, because there's nothing prohibiting Washington State DOT from collecting that information from California operators. But right now, with the way state law is written in California, the good to go, which is the Washington State electronic toll collection system, a good to go tag can't be used in California. They can't come down here to California and drive on our toll facility. We would not be able to process that transaction because we can't even share basic information. And so it's funny, knowing that I was going to be doing this with you guys today, I was in a meeting earlier with some of the state toll operators, and they were talking about this very issue. And they are planning to start working to possibly lobby the legislature to make some changes to state law to allow for this to happen. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that down the road.
I was going to say that I would guess if you want that interoperability, write your state assembly critter, write your state senate critter. I use critters to be gender neutral, and say you'd like to have the legislation updated to make it so we can have interoperable tolls.
Yep.
It'd be nice to get rid of my Sun Pass. Just saying.
I'll note we've been talking to Joe for almost an hour, and I don't like podcasts that are way over an hour because they don't fit my commute, and therefore I don't think you would either. So we're going to split this into two parts. So we'll finish part one here, and we'll resume in a subsequent episode with Joe doing part two. Next time on California Highways Route by Route, we will have part two of this interview while we're still in this break, and then we'll be following up with one more special episode in the interseason period, so stay tuned for that. For more information, we will have some links to the various Fastrak organizations on the show page at CA Route by Route. As always, information is available on our website, CA Route by Route, where you can leave us comments on the episode. The episode is also available on our Anchor FM home, Anchor FM, CA Route by Route. Join us as we continue to explore California highways route by route. I'll note that this episode was written by Daniel Fagan and Tom Fear. I edited it and produced it. Our opening theme is I Like to Be by the Seaside by John H. Glover Kind. Episodes are recorded by freeconferencecall.com, and this podcast is a product of California Highways at cahighways.org and Gribble Nation at gribblnation.org.